AITA for treating my coworker differently after she accused me of SA when I saved her life. I'm a quiet guy and genuinely friendly. I treats all my coworkers as friends. About 2 months ago, during a work lunch, one of my coworkers started choking, so I did the Heimlich thing to help her. After she's in the clear, the others cheered. I asked if she alright. She just nodded and headed to the bathroom without a word, so I didn't think much about that. Until 2 days later, I got called into HR for my inappropriate behavior. I was confused and asked for more details. That's when they told me that my coworker had filed a complaint stating that she felt my touches when I was helping her was inappropriate. My body was too close and she felt my private touching her. I gave my statement and they put me on ice. I was still working with potential to be removed while they investigate further. After a week, I was in the clear. I returned to working normally without fear, but I started distancing myself from the coworker. She tried to apologize, which I accepted, and tried to explain that she has to tell me that she has trauma, but I still take precautions and only treat her as just colleague. I'm no longer talk to her unless needed to. Always keeping distance. No longer inviting her out unless there are others. She could feel my hesitant toward her and how no longer treat her the same as others. She tried to say that I'm being ridiculous and petty, but I told her that I'm just looking after myself. So am I the odd?
I, 26F, gave birth to my second child 2 days ago. It was a beautiful home birth, so I was never discharged from the hospital. With my first in this pregnancy, I made it clear to my husband I wanted to follow the 555 rule. He seemed to drag his feet, but because he wanted kids more than I did, he agreed. I still love my kids dearly and wouldn't not have them now. I just didn't want to go through pregnancy. First 5 days in bed. Nothing but skin to skin with my daughter, breastfeeding and resting. Next 5 days on bed. Sitting up, still breastfeeding, cuddling with baby, doing homework with my son, crossword puzzles, etc. Next 5 after that around bed. Still majority resting but doing light chores, folding laundry, diaper changing, just not standing for more than 30 minutes. All while still cuddling with baby, breastfeeding baby, doing homework with my son and coloring. This baby is very colicky and my husband is the one having to get out of bed, walk around with her and sit in the rocking chair, do diapers and take her and our son on walks to get some sunshine. Our son, 5, has started acting out at home due to the stress of the new baby and lack of sleep. We've offered him going to my parents next door and he seems interested. We've prepared a month's worth of freezer meals, so for dinner all he has to do is throw the disposable tin in the oven and walk away for a few hours. We have more than enough disposable dishwasher. We have a dog he needs to feed and take out and walks with the kids. Today he came to me crying, saying it was all too much and he couldn't do this by himself. I reminded him that he agreed to it and I have to go back to work shortly after the 555 is up. So I need to be as rested and healed as possible so I can better perform tasks at work, then come home and perform tasks as well. He begged me to help out with our son, who will not sit still, and help with light cleaning, wiping countertops, gathering clutter into a pile, etc. I again said no, I am entitled to rest and I will help around the house in 8 days.
AITA for punishing my family by no longer doing birthdays, holidays, vacations because my dad screwed me and my wife over? Asshole. When my wife and I were talking about getting married, my dad said that he would give us a down payment for a home. We were thrilled and kept that in mind. We would be able to afford a good starter home with his help, and we scrimped and saved to add to it. Except apparently, he meant a sum of money good for a down payment for a house near us where the cost of living is low. He did not ever mean a down payment for a home in Colorado, where my wife and I have lived since we were in college. He said he thought I would be smart enough to realize that we need to move somewhere with a lower COL in Colorado. He keeps saying move to a cheaper city. Our lives are here. Our friends, our jobs, our hobbies. You can't exactly leave your house and be up on top of a 14,000-foot peak in 6 hours where my family is. I told him that we had never talked about moving back there, and we never would. That we would rather be stuck renting for a while longer than be stuck somewhere we didn't want to be, and to move to a cheaper city wouldn't work for us. He said so be it and gave us the amount, and that was that. I expressed gratitude and thanked him for the money. It is still towards a goal. Well, because of this shift in our finances, we have had to make a lot of changes to save up the rest of the money. We have had to cut out vacations, birthday gifts, holidays, etc. We won't be traveling home for a few years. At our current rate, we should have an okay down payment by the end of next year, 2025. My dad confronted us about this because we won't come for a summer break trip and told me that I was being selfish entitled brat because I hadn't gotten my way. That I was essentially punishing the rest of the family because we assumed what his gift would be. I told him that I was grateful for the amount he gave us, but that it means we do need to buckle down and save every penny if we want to be able to afford a house anytime soon. Even townhouses around us are easily over 400K, and that's for the sketchy ones. But is my dad right? Am I the a-hole?
AITA for making my daughter leave because my husband is attracted to her? I, 55F, have been married to my husband and my daughter's stepdad, 63M, for 4 years. My 23 years old daughter and I have a complicated relationship. She has been diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder. She has a lot of trauma from watching me and my husband's horrible marriage go down and was bullied in school. When she told me she was being bullied by peers, my view that all children are innocents really tied my hands because I told her that if I said anything to them, I would be an adult harassing a child. She has blamed me for that ever since, and keeps referring to this one time where the kids at school called her trash due to the fact that she wasn't taking care of her hygiene due to depression. Part, not all of my response was telling her to take a shower, and I bought her new clothes. The bullying finally ended with an expulsion and a suspension for the ringleaders. She still throws the fact that a school clinic volunteer told her that if she was their kid, she'd have permission to punch back if administrators didn't do anything. I thought that having her live with me while she finishes school and gets a job would help heal some childhood wounds if my second husband and I modeled a healthy relationship. However, my daughter now doesn't get along with my husband. She is a very introverted, creative person who likes immersing herself in escapism. So she'd get annoyed if she was sitting eating alone, and my husband would sit across from her and eat, saying she ate later so she could eat alone. However, my husband started acting distant from me, and my daughter complained that his eyes lingered for too long. She got very angry, and there was a lot of shouting and slamming of doors. Finally, my husband admitted he's attracted to her, and it's hard to be around her all day. Said she was walking temptation, and said that's why he was avoiding sex with me. I was so upset to hear this. I don't blame my daughter for this, but at the same time the situation has become unbearable. Something would have to give, and I couldn't collect my thoughts with both of them still being in the house. So I gave my daughter money to stay at an extended stay hotel and asked her to utilize her college's emergency financial and housing resources they have for students in need. She responded by storming out and telling my ex, who is now circling social media using it to paint me as the villain of all villains. I'm not abandoning my daughter. She qualifies for those resources anyway since my ex is unemployed and we are in substantial debt. I just need time to process the situation and don't want to leave my house to stay with my daughter when I have a marriage to figure out whether or not to save. AITA.
AITA for telling a woman her baby is not a miracle? 15F here. My baby half-brother was born a few months ago. My stepmother has baby fever right now and is arranging mommy and baby events at the house when she keeps inviting other moms and babies around. I don't care. They can do it as long as they don't bother me. She usually wants me to help with prep and clean up, which I don't like doing as it's not my problem and they're not my guests. Anyway, this last weekend there were this woman and a baby, and she was going around showing the baby to everyone and asking them, is she not a miracle? And honestly, it was obnoxious. But I wasn't rude and didn't say anything until I was getting out to see my friends, and she stopped me and asked, is she not a miracle, and offered me the chance to hold the baby. I asked, you want an honest answer that? And she said yes. So I said no. Tens of thousands of them are made every day. It's the furthest thing from a miracle. She was annoyed and said I was short-sighted and rude. I didn't say anything and left. Later that night, my stepmother and dad told me I was rude to their guest, and I should have reassured her that her child is special because she is special to her. I honestly don't care, but they want me to call her to apologize, and I don't see why I should. She was the one who stopped me and asked me a question, and I offered to bow, but she wanted an honest answer, so I gave it. AITA?
AITA for not following my neighborhood's tradition? Not the a-hole. I, F25, have just moved into a neighborhood a couple weeks ago, and so far it has been very peaceful. From the neighbors that have came up to me, everyone has been very friendly and welcoming, which I really appreciate since I'm not from around the town. I have noticed that some neighbors have been having frequent parties the last couple of weeks, but I chalked it up to it being celebrations since I know one neighbor's daughter just graduated high school, and July 4th is coming up. I have been to some of these parties to get to know the other neighbors better, and one person who really stands out to me is this one neighbor, Melinda. Not her actual name. At a neighbor's party she came up to me and introduced herself, and we talked for a while. This is when I learned about the newest neighbor party. Apparently, the newest neighbor is supposed to throw a grand party showing off their home and entertain the neighborhood as a whole thing. Melinda told me since I was the newest neighbor, it was my duty to. Thought Melinda was joking when she told me this as it didn't make sense to me, and I laughed. This seemed to have made Melinda a little angry, as she said she was serious and it was a tradition in the neighborhood and that I had 2 weeks to host a party. This was 2 weeks ago. Yesterday was the day I was supposed to do this tradition, but I happily stayed in bed. Melinda and a couple neighbors came and rang on the doorbell, but I ignored them and enjoyed binge-watching childhood shows. I decided to go outside today and Melinda came up to me furious, saying that I didn't do the tradition and that I was being a bad neighbor. The thing is, however, I asked some other people about this tradition and they have heard some people do it, but mostly never really mentioned it to be a reoccurring thing that each new person in the neighborhood should do. I told Melinda that I wouldn't be throwing a party anytime soon as I didn't feel comfortable with the thought of people coming into my home, let alone me having to entertain them. Melinda got angry, saying that the neighborhood is like a big family, and stormed off. I let it go, but the neighbors that were with Melinda at my house that night have been telling me I should have just did the party and that I'm leaving a bad impression. I think my reason is justified, but I'm not really sure. So, AITA, thank you for all the comments and suggestions. I also see where I could have told Melinda that I wasn't comfortable, but from the 1 to 2 interactions I've had with her, it sounds like she wouldn't have cared regardless, but I don't want to assume. A lot of suggestions were very insightful and funny. After I posted this, I went to sleep and decided to go out today. I didn't bump into Melinda or any of her friends, so I'm not sure about her. However, some neighbors have offered to help me continue to move in by bringing boxes in. One of these neighbors, John, not real name, has been living here for a while, and he told me he's not fond of Melinda, and from what he has seen, some neighbors just try to avoid her or put up with her for the sake of it. Someone messaged me asking how moving in was going, and it has been going good, but hopefully my mattress comes in soon so I can stop sleeping on the couch. It's rough. If anything crazy happens or if Melinda comes up to me, I'll let you all know. But that's really it for now since it's only been a new day. Update. Melinda came up to me. I thought since she didn't bother me yesterday, today would be the same, but it wasn't. I got out of my car and I saw Melinda ringing my doorbell like crazy and knocking hard. I got out my car and asked her what she was doing, and she looked at me and she just looked angry and demanded an apology. I asked her an apology for what, and she's saying that I'm going around asking people about the tradition, and if I feel so highly about it that I should just do it like everyone else has. I think she's crazy. I told her get off my property and to leave me alone. I just left her outside because I didn't want to deal with her, but I heard something fall outside and go to check a few minutes later and she kicked my plant. I guess we're in a war thing now? But who kicks plants out of rage?
AITA for grounding my daughter and canceling her senior trip after I found out she was cheating on her boyfriend. I have 2 daughters, Lizzie, 17F, and Mackenzie, 14F. Their dad and I divorced a few years ago after I discovered he was having an affair. I have the kids most of the time, and their dad has them every weekend and during the summers. Lizzie has been dating Jacob, 18M, for over a year now. Jacob is constantly at our house. He's a sweet, good young man, and I believe he'll be valedictorian of their class. However, a few weeks ago, I overheard Lizzie on the phone with a guy, clearly flirting. At first, I thought it was Jacob, but then I heard her say, Brandon. I realized she was talking to someone else. Then a week later, she mentioned to me that she was heading out to hang with a friend, and when I looked out the window, I saw her get into a car and greet a guy with a kiss. It wasn't Jacob. Even after that, Jacob continued to come over, hanging out with Lizzie. He and Lizzie still acted like a couple, holding hands, laughing, and spending time together, just like they always had. I felt disgusted knowing my daughter was being a two-timer. After Jacob left that day, I confronted my daughter. I asked her point blank, "Are you cheating on your boyfriend with another guy?" She said it was none of my business and that her personal life was hers only. I told her she was wrong and that I raised her better than to treat people like this. She told me she was bored with Jacob and that Brandon was more her type now. I told her that if she wasn't happy, she should just break up with Jacob. She said she didn't know if she wanted to be with Brandon or if she was just having fun flirting and teasing. I told her cheating was unacceptable and wrong, and as a consequence, I grounded her. I also told her she wasn't allowed to go on her senior trip with her friends. She obviously did not take that too well and has been at her dad's place for the last couple of days. My ex-husband called me, saying I was being unreasonable not letting her go on the trip and that her and Jacob was just a high school thing. He then told me I needed to put my bitterness aside and stop punishing his daughter. I told him I was teaching our daughter right from wrong, and that actions have consequences.